Tom had never liked the attic. It wasn't just the dust, the creaking floorboards, or the spiderwebs that seemed to grow overnight. It was something else, an uneasy feeling he couldn't quite place. But when his grandmother passed away and left him the old house, he had no choice but to face it. The first few days were uneventful. He spent most of his time cleaning, sorting through boxes of his grandmother's belongings, and wondering how a woman who rarely left the house had accumulated so much. By the end of the week, Tom had reached the attic, the last and most dreaded place to organize. He climbed the narrow staircase, the wood groaning under his weight. The air was colder up here, carrying a faint, musty smell. Sunlight streamed through a small, dirty window, casting long shadows across the floor. Tom set to work, opening boxes filled with old photo albums, faded clothes, and keepsakes. Hours passed, and he began to feel at ease. Maybe the attic wasn't so bad after all. But then he saw it. At the far end of the attic, partially obscured by a stack of boxes, was a door. Tom froze. There had never been a door there before. He was sure of it. As a child, he'd spent countless summers in this house, exploring every inch of it. He would have remembered a door. The door was small, with chipped white paint and an antique brass handle. It didn't match the rest of the attic, as though it had been added later. A strange feeling washed over him, curiosity mixed with dread. He approached the door slowly, heart pounding in his chest. His fingers hovered over the handle. For a moment he hesitated. Something deep inside him screamed to leave it alone, but his curiosity won out. The door creaked as it opened, revealing a small, dimly lit room. It was empty, except for a wooden table and a single chair. On the table lay an old, leather-bound diary. Tom stepped inside, his breath visible in the suddenly frigid air. The room felt wrong. The shadows seemed to shift and ripple, even though there was no light source to create them. He picked up the diary, its leather cover cold to the touch. The pages were yellowed with age, filled with neat, handwritten entries. He flipped to the first page, and his stomach turned. June 3rd, 1982. Tom woke up late today, as usual. He spent the morning playing in the garden before coming inside for lunch. I wish he would stop leaving his toys everywhere. Tom stared at the entry in disbelief. It was about him. The handwriting wasn't his grandmother's, but the details were exact. He turned to the next page. June 4th, 1982. Tom didn't notice the shadow in the corner of the room today. I don't think he ever does. It watches him, though. Always watching. A chill ran down his spine. He flipped through the diary, skimming the entries. Each one described a day from his childhood in unsettling detail. Conversations he'd had, places he'd gone, even thoughts he'd never shared with anyone. But the entries grew darker. June 10th, 1982. Tom won't stop asking about the attic. I keep telling him to stay away, but he doesn't listen. He never listens. I saw it watching him again today. It's getting closer. Tom slammed the diary shut, his hands trembling. This had to be a prank, some sick joke. But the handwriting didn't match anyone he knew, and the diary looked decades old. He turned to leave, but the door was gone. Panic surged through him. The room was completely enclosed now. No door, no window, just four walls closing in around him. He banged on the wall where the door had been, shouting for help, but his voice seemed to vanish into the air. Then he heard it, a faint whisper coming from behind him. He turned slowly, his eyes scanning the empty room. The shadows on the walls were moving again, twisting and curling like smoke. The whispering grew louder, though he couldn't make out the words. Something moved in the corner. "Who's there?" Tom demanded, his voice shaking. The shadows coalesced into a shape, a tall, thin figure with hollow eyes and elongated limbs. It stepped forward, its movements jerky and unnatural. Tom backed away, clutching the diary like a shield. The figure tilted its head, as if studying him. "What do you want?" Tom whispered. The figure pointed at the diary. Tom hesitated, then opened it to the next page. The ink was fresh, as though someone had just written it. Tom shouldn't have opened the door. It doesn't like when people open the door. He looked up, but the figure was gone. The shadows were still, and the room was silent. A loud creak broke the silence, and Tom spun around. The door was back, standing slightly ajar. Without thinking, he ran to it, bursting through into the attic. He stumbled down the stairs, slamming the attic door shut behind him. His chest heaved as he tried to catch his breath. For a moment he thought he was safe. But then he noticed the diary was still in his hands. He didn't remember bringing it with him, but there it was.